All right, we are live. Look,
Brand
not
Brothers, in
every
effect.
company can pull off a casket. You know what I mean?
That's right. But if there's one who can, it's Liquid Death. Let's check it out.
It's not just a casket. It's a revolutionary beverage cooler. It has triple foam cold cell insulation and patented T-latch lid locks. Is this to your satisfaction?
It's perfect.
The casket cooler from Liquid Death and Yeti. It'll keep your drinks ice cold for an eternity. Cheers! There's only one in existence. Bid on it now at liquiddeath.com/Yeti.
Oh my gosh.
So some quick context. Yesterday when I looked at this, the bid for this was at like $40K. So Liquid Death has been doing this, right? So one of their marketing stunts now is doing one of one crazy items, popping them up at on eBay to get the bidding going for them, and then locking it down. And then this yesterday, whenever I saw a tweet on it, was like at 40K, which doesn't surprise me because Yeti culture is real. Jordan, you're in the peak of Yeti culture. How you feel about that?
Dallas, Texas, live
Texas,
and direct. The cult is there. $56,000 is the current bid. 674 people have bid on this. Are you kidding me? I didn't realize they were bidding. They were doing a bid for this. Wow. Yeti culture is quite pervasive down here. I wrote down a quote from Yeti's head of their president. And he said, "We're an entertainment company first. We don't want to make marketing. We want to make people laugh, and we want to be the funniest thing in someone's feed for the day. That's our goal." And I thought that was pretty brilliant. We discussed last week that they are essentially an entertainment company at this point, with trying to get the most outrageous thing that they can possible, and it's working.
Depending which like Southern Scion family buys this, that there's like multiple frat orientations that are going to be used, like where this will be used, right? Like where the kid has to like drink himself out of the Yeti. I feel like we're headed there inevitably.
Absolutely. The Illuminati, some mogul family from Texas will buy it with a lot of oil money, I assume.
The Sigma Chi Illuminati are ready to go. But that's not even. I feel like that's not even some of the craziest stuff of this week. But I think maybe we dive into Yeti for a second. One thing that always impressed me about Yeti every time I go in there has been like the color theory. Because I remember I went in there one time when they were really introducing like the lavender shades of purple, and it was like night sky or whatever. Like it was like it's like Wyoming dream or whatever. But they have done such an excellent job, because you'll notice if you follow any other Southern companies, like a year later, they will all just take the Yeti color palette, right? Because those people, they put so much time and energy into researching that. And then when you went in there, like there's this big Yeti flagship store in Austin I used to go in a lot, where they put like a billboard above it. It's a really good marketing play for them. And you'll see just people just browsing Yeti, right? They're just going there, and then you'll see like there's like the cluster of moms around like the purple section. And it's really interesting.
Yeah. You were just like, at one point, I think you were sharing like the Pantone screenshots or something of Yeti.
It's basically like, see that updated 20-ounce thing you have above, like when you scrolled very far up there. I think I just went to that. Yeah, keep going.
Right
the whole sheet. Yeah. I think we basically either there were already Pantones on it, or a VA grabbed all the Pantones and we looked at it. But I was like, look, if you are trying to appeal to a middle America demographic and you want to be slightly on the edge of color and not just doing the primaries, like there's no better way than just jacking whatever they're doing.
Yeah,
like they put the research in.
Peak purple, river green, clay.
Yeah, river green, brother. Send it.
Absolutely. Yeah, the color theory is real, and it's
Ash, do you see, is Yeti culture fully permeated the streets of New York City, or is it like Simple Modern and Odwalla and
Odwalla is big here. Not a huge Simple Modern culture here in the streets.
It's not Oklahoma,
But Yeti has opened up a store in Flatiron that was recent. So I think it's a matter of time.
Do you think that's a Stanley response? Like we need to bring retail to the heart of liberal America?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, how will Stanley respond? Stanley, what do they have a flagship there in New York? Is it?
No, I'm saying they went viral enough to permeate the New York denizens.
That's true.
So So,
Yeah.
so this Yeti and Liquid Death casket, I think is an interesting one. I think we should, talk about it from just one specific, question here is why does, it's obviously not like terribly functional. It's a novelty. You get, traction.
Can it fit in the bed of a truck?
Right.
If it can, it's not unfunctional, to be honest.
It's not dysfunctional. There's definitely going to be people using it, but they're making one of one, right? So it's not like this big kind of scalable thing.
Yep.
So for Liquid Death, like what do you guys see as the benefit of doing a partnership like this and creating this type of product?
I mean, I think with Yeti, it's actually great I think this is actually a great partnership on both sides in the sense that Liquid Death just needs consistent reminders for their community of like their existence. And I think they've gone through, obviously permeated the edge cases into the mainstream, but like the Yeti buyer is just a very like an American who spends slightly more on quality for a thing that they like, that they're assuming of, that like has a bunch of lifestyle connotations around the outdoors and the various things that Yeti supports. And I just feel like that's a core customer for Liquid Death, that the more that they continue to touch, the less they're going to like one day lose market share. Obviously, this is like a moonshot version of that who knows how effective that is. And on the Yeti side as well, I think Yeti's biggest struggle as a public company is just being like getting anyone to believe that there is a big future there besides like the inevitable downfall of super expensive coolers. And so being somewhat tied into like, oh, we're working with like one of the more fringe interesting drinks, just gives them a light cool factor. Because like the only thing I feel like Yeti has done that has any interest to, besides like releasing more products, is when they acquired whatever it is, the bag company.
Was it somebody like Ridge Wallets or somebody? Or who was the bag company?
No, it was I think Ridge Wallet is I think while they would love
Another
to be
Austin
acquired by
staple,
Yeti,
right?
is likely a stretch.
Yeah.
But it's a bag company. I have multiple of them, just spacing right now because it's still early.
Backpack brand mystery.
Yeah, Mystery Ranch. And like a Mystery Ranch, if you're like an operator or like you hunt at all, then like you definitely know them. I got them included. Like they included the Mystery Ranch bag with an SBR I bought at one point. And like it's an excellent brand, excellent product, a great choice for them to be like, hey, instead of maybe just selling coolers and valuing ourselves on that, we actually sell this high quality American ecosystem, because like their bags are great for their like fishing world, but a Mystery Ranch bag is a different beast altogether. It's like a super useful everyday super quality item.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Like the oh look who it is. Oren.
Yeah, Yeti acquired Mystery Ranch.
Yeah. This was actually just a way to plug Oren's old TikTok video from February. So go like, comment,
the SEO is real. I just have to throw that out there right now. Yeah,
it really is.
That's a great fleece I'm wearing.
Yeah, totally. I mean, this is a great. I think it's a great example of like complementary. We talk about collaborations, and the best collaborations, and I really think this is getting lost today, but like are complementary. They work together. They have a shared audience. They're going to expose each other to the other audience. And so often right now, I just see people grabbing, and even in endorsers, athletes, it's like, oh, this person has a big audience. We want to be with them. Let's do that thing. And I think Liquid Death, again, is so smart. I'm going to pop one open while I talk about this, but this show is not sponsored by Liquid Death yet, by the way. I know we talk about them every week, and that's probably just a great example because of their marketing and entertainment value. But I think, cold water associated with Yeti, cold drinks and having cold beverages, like it just works together, and you add hilarity and comedy to it, and it's just a recipe for success. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a creative fit from like their tagline is "Murder Your Thirst," and so like anything death related is like, yeah, that's kind of no brainer. I think there is, if you look at their post, they had like 6 million views on their reel. If you type in Liquid Death in Google, like there's a ton of news on like the Liquid Death casket. And I think this is an interesting like if you look at it, right, it's not like this product that's going to make them a lot of money. It was probably a decent amount of work to like bring this to life and like get it manufactured and all of that stuff. But the reach that they're getting on it is pretty crazy. And it seems like every collaboration or like drop that they do, it gets this like pretty wild reach, both from a social standpoint as well as like all of the press writing about it. And I think that's like they're in this position where they're consistently like, we are going to create these like, what is like the clickbait concept? What is a viral concept? And we're just going to reverse engineer that. And like people are going to talk about that as a default. Whereas so many brands look at like PR this opposite way, where they're like, hey, what are our tentpole moments for the year? Let's hire a PR agency and have the PR agency pitch how we're doing like, you know, free flowers for Mother's Day, you know, and it's like these kind of tired things.
Well, they've got a machine for it now,
It's
right?
not
Because
just-
as soon as those PR companies realize they get clicks and views from that thing, they're going to consistently post it. All the ad ones are going to do it. The reason Yeti's even better is Yeti's a part of the affiliate link economy. So anytime that any of those people can link back to a Yeti, that's how all those journalists make money, right? And so a bunch of those you just saw, they're all food and wine and stuff. Like they live in that like that Le Creuset, Yeti, all that. Like it's just like, okay, cool, we get $14 a purchase back, you know. And so I think that it doesn't work for the majority of companies, especially new companies. Like unless you're like, hey, what we're going to do here is pop off on Reels and going to work. But when you have the combination of we can pop off on social and we're going to be able to utilize the PR economy, you know, it's certainly a tent pole to have in the strategy.
That's a great point. So the affiliate, any of the media are going to get the affiliate as well. Super smart.
Not for Liquid Death, but for Yeti in particular. And that's worth it. If you don't understand that piece of it, like anytime you see anything, especially in kitchen, especially in cooler, especially in whatever, or you're trying to get PR for those, like PR is no longer like, pitch me a good story. PR is pitch me something where there's a CJ affiliate or Pepper Jam or whatever the current thing is that I'm going to make money off of. If you're not signed up with those companies, like you have to realize there is very little actual journalism there. There's only the affiliate link economy. And so having that infrastructure, which is also expensive and has account managers and has all this and needs scale to succeed, is the only reason you see these same companies always written about inside these articles being like, oh, the new Le Creuset color. It's like, does anyone really care? Like, well, the journalists really want everyone to care because there's affiliate clicks.
Great point.
Leo has a good question in here. You know, what did that case and the content cost them to make? Can they break even in sale? And I think like the way that Liquid Death is going to be looking at this is like, okay, if they do make $56,000 on the sale of this, like that's great. That's actually like quite a substantial sum. You know, kind of given the production of this probably like cost a decent bit. Maybe Jordan and Oren, you can speak to that. But I think the way that they look at this is like they got, you know, 6 million views just on like their one video that they've posted. They have like all of this media reach from it. This is really marketing expense for them for like a pretty nominal cost. And it's not really about the sale of the product.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if we want to break down like what we actually think something, like, I think you could probably get a fabricator to do that. And like on the cheap side at like 8, if it was extremely fucking dialed like 20, like I mean, honestly, probably it's that sub 10K to get that product actually completed, right? And then 20, you have they already have a bunch of the components or whatever. And then like that ad is one of those where like, cool, could you get that ad done for like 40K probably? Sure. Did they probably spend 200 because they're a big company and have agencies and stuff? Yes. Like, but that's really the range of that. And like, you know, if they're shooting one of those up a month, that's like a drop in the bucket for them.
I mean, look at the reach they're getting on that. I mean, they'll make the money back.
Just like, that's 3 billboards in a metro area for you know. For
I mean, this 10K is like nothing, you know. You could literally, I think you're actually taking a existing coffin and you're lining it with, you know, whatever cooler material.
Yeah, I'm sure they have a bunch of that, and it's also relatively modular since they do have so many sizes. But we have another question in here. Someone who's doing a consulting challenge at their school. Yeti is one of the companies they're consulting for. I'm not going to get into Kohl's, the second part of the question, but the first part, brother. From problems from a branding side, do you see them having? And I'll jump in. I'm really curious in the other takes, especially Jordan in the belly of the beast, and then Ashwin in the anti-Yeti capital. But like, I look at it like Yeti is such an incredibly solid brand. I think what their core problem is more of a perception. Like they're a public company at the same time. So you're not only branding yourself for like, hey, I need to sell this to my customers, but I need to sell the market that we have a future that is bright. And the hardest part of any brand, GoPro went through this too, where you sell at a premium against people that are cheaper than you purely off of the brand, is that the market just doesn't understand that and never values it to the point which they want to. So I think their branding scenario is more of like, continuing to remind those people that they're relevant, continuing to lock in their core customer, and paint a vision for the future that the average investor who is like kind of dumb, like can understand enough. And then also that fund managers think is safe enough to then just like lump in with like other larger investments they do. I think that's a challenge. Curious what y'all think.
I mean, this though, to me, yes, as soon as someone like can compete on this, but like that, this is what we love and what we talk about. You know, brand is the differentiator. One of the definitions that I like, although, you know, Ashwin brought up a great point a couple of weeks ago that there are brands that can exist on value. But one of the definitions I've heard of a brand is the delta between the cost of the commodity and what people are willing to pay. So, you know, what can you can get another you know, mug that is insulated for probably $10, but a Yeti one, particularly if I want the NFL licensing, let's see, we're looking at, you know, anything from what are they, 60 to $150, maybe $200-300. So their issue, is just going to be able to compete on that. But so far, they have incredible marketing, they have incredible branding, they continue to break through on like even
that's hard for the public market to understand more than anything else is that like I think because and I think it's one of those things where like once you have those like the companies that are until you're like in that world you don't realize just how unsavvy that investor base is because they're always looking for a reason to have a downside, right? And with someone like this they're like, well, cool, that cooler costs $34, you know, like in reality to make, and they're doing purely off brand. And then Yeti's now investing like, I mean, actually, from your take, how much do you think that NFL partnership cost, right? That's a new thing for them to be like, we need to go so mainstream that we're willing to pay whatever to be able to get your Chiefs branded cooler.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, it's so funny here. Actually, if you guys want a little fun fact, the NFL, Jerry Jones is one of the biggest wildcatters.
So Cowboys aren't even on there.
Yeah. Well, they are actually right there, but they have a 31+1 deal. So if you want to license with the NFL, you can get 31 teams out of the 32, but you usually have to do a separate deal with the Dallas Cowboys to get them included because back in the 90s, Jerry saw this huge opportunity to license the team while all the 31 other owners were like, whatever, let the NFL handle it. Just lump us all in, give us the paycheck. And he was like, no, we're going to charge a bigger premium. So while the league signed with Coca-Cola, he signed with Pepsi. While the league was signed with Reebok, he signed with Nike. So, you know, a little old Dallas Cowboys trivia. Now, we can't win a Super Bowl since then. But anyway, Ashwin, thoughts on Yeti branding and any challenges they might have?
No, Yeti branding. I mean, I love Yeti branding. It's great. I've done spent a terribly long time with them. But I think one of the things that strikes me, especially as they're a public company, right? There's always this pressure to grow like quarter by quarter. And the first thing that strikes me when I'm on their site is like, if you go to shop, they have coolers, they have drinkware and cookware, they have bags, they have cargo, they have just like general like chairs, blankets, dog bowls. It's kind of like becoming a mini department store with just the Yeti logo on it. And so like in getting into all of these various product categories, they start to like dilute some of the like brand equity and like what their core competencies and what they're known for? Or does this give them a way to expand into other categories to like pull people in through whatever, the dog bowl, and upsell them on other products? I'm not necessarily sure, but like, that's just my first impression that, hey, they're spreading pretty thin in a lot of categories here.
Wow.
I think that's where the acquisitions come in. But I think we've hit Yeti for a good chunk of this so far. We got Olipop coming on 10 or 12. Maybe we hit one of the next ones that's on this sheet. In the meantime, one of the questions on here, someone keeps asking about if we're using the Boom app for this call. We are not.
We are not. We use StreamYard.
So we could talk New Balance, or we could talk the US Open. What do you guys want to hit?
Let's do New Balance.
Yeah. New Balance is launching a $1,000 sneaker here.
So for context,
Warren, tell us about Loro Piana.
So New Balance has been on a bit of a tear. They've done Margiela sneakers. They've done Margiela loafers, which were relatively viral. They are crowding with Loro Piana. Loro Piana came in the Succession era marketing. They came out under they're obviously one of the top quiet luxury brands. They have really specific wool. They have like the King's wool. They have all these really you can go buy yourself a multi-$1,000 shirt from them, etc. And this is just a good example of something where I feel like it has no real reason to exist, in the sense that you can't tell there's a differential, which I guess obviously is the idea behind quiet luxury, that like, okay, you're using the finest wool in all the land, passed down through generations for like the inside of this shoe. You also can't, there's no like logo or iconography where people are going to be like, oh, that's super loud, which is again, kind of back to the play of this quiet luxury idea. And then now it's like, okay, all these New Balance customers that want to have a pair of shoes that cost 7 times the amount, that we're giving you the option. I think, look, it's a great headline because New Balance is on a tear of getting good headlines, but it is an oddball collaboration that I think kind of really devalues the Loro Piana brand in particular.
Yeah, that's interesting. But the fascinating thing to me, when I was at Nike, we were, watching, it was like we were dancing with this devil in some ways where, you'd have Virgil do the collaboration with Louis Vuitton, and we've seen Adidas collaborate with Gucci, but then all of a sudden, once these luxury brands, they start want to make it their own sneaker, so like maybe the logical evolution there is that then they take that and they start competing. And then you run into the issue with these brands like New Balance or Nike or Adidas, where your athletes then start wanting to show up to the game instead of just in their Air Force Ones or their shell toes. They want to wear that luxury brand, and they step up a level from there as well. So running a little bit of a risk, but it says aspirational, it says premium. They've been doing the collaborations with ALD.
Yeah, I just think that like from a brand of that standpoint, like there's Louis Vuitton, there's fashion houses. There's avant-garde fashion houses and people making like more interesting stuff on that level. And then there's like this like true premium, quiet luxury, for lack of better terms. You get Loro, you get Brunello, you get even like Delvaux, like bag brands where people were like only like the ultra money was diving in there and weren't even like publicly aware until like a year or two ago. And like for them, it's like I think any step downwards is a real negative. I think like they've had a lot of interesting time navigating the current attention that they've got. But it's like, I think that it'll be a much different brand in 2 years if we see a few more of those, and they may be wanting that. They may be like, hey, there's a much bigger prize for us, a level down, but it is a significantly different brand for Loro than the one it is today. I think one that actually kind of isolates their core audience in a significant way. And they will kind of have to be saying, hey, we're actually more interested in this audience one step down and believe we can sell significantly more volume there, which could be the case. But say you brought up a really good point. It's like, okay, if you're Loro Piana, you're looking for a sneaker brand to work with. Is it New Balance? I think that's an interesting question.
The only thing I could see there is an American audience. Like if they want more, true blue American, it's the only real differentiator.
I will say it's the best of the options. You know, like right to be straight up, like, okay, we're not going to see a Loro Adidas. We're definitely not going to see a Loro Nike. Any of the smaller sub brands, I can't see that working. Like New Balance is kind of the only one that sort of is universally appealing, but it just seems odd for me. But yeah, let's say Cooper.
Yeah. All right. Any thoughts there on Loro, Ashwin, before we move on?
No additional thoughts on Loro.
All right.
Are you wearing the King's wool?
Yes.
As we talk through this? Yeah.
I've got it on right now.
All right. Cooper Flag sides with New Balance this week. Cooper Flag, if you don't know, is the consensus future #1 pick next year.
White Zion. That's how just we put that one.
White Zion. Indeed. With a little less acrobatic dunks. He's got plenty of dunks. The issue here, the interesting thing here, basically my inbox flooded with, Nike missed on him. And how did Nike miss on this guy? And, he's from Maine. So, New Balance was kind of playing up this backyard signing of the hometown hero, as I wrote about in my newsletter this week. But I think, it's fascinating to me. Cooper Flag, I went and tried to find a single image of him wearing New Balance previous. And I do want to get y'all's thoughts on, like, does authenticity still matter or do kids not care? But I couldn't find a single image of him wearing New Balance prior to him signing this contract in the last couple of weeks. He wore Nike all the time. Since he's in college, he's at Duke, he will be required to wear Nike. And so any team activity that he's in, he will have to wear the Nike swoosh. He is not allowed to wear New Balance in any basketball activity. So for me, this is one of the challenges of, NIL. They are allowed to do a deal with a brand that's not their school sponsor, but they are not allowed to wear it at their highest visible moments. Also, he is not super active on social. He's got 800,000 followers on Instagram, but I think he has, and this is very common, he's got probably 17 actually native posts in his feed, and most of them are, some announcement, commitment, and now a brand deal.
And all right, so with something like this, obviously they're not wearing it on court. New Balance is just kind of striking a flag that they're now playing in this space and like in an option there. What's the dream scenario for New Balance to stand out here? That they're like, all right, cool, this feed is now going to be flooded with him at the ALD store, like sipping an iced coffee and some New Balances. What are we looking for?
I think it's that. I think that I really think they'll bring him to a bunch of events. He'll be the guest, at the new thing.
They've got a sneaker unveiling.
Indeed, at the Loro Piana. Yes, exactly. They've got a great roster now.
Sorry.
And I mean, to me, so all this is to me is them making a pretty big bet. The way I described in my newsletter today was NIL, which is allowing college athletes to make money and sign deals with brands, is a new phenomenon in the last 3 years. It allows smaller brands like New Balance to make big bets on big athletes like this so that they can compete with the big boys at the next level. So their bet is that they will create a great relationship with Cooper. Maybe over the next year or so, they'll be able to get him a performance sneaker that he really likes. And by the time he goes to the league, he's going to say, you know what? I don't want to leave New Balance for a bigger fish like Nike or Adidas. And they get to hold on to him. So that's what I think they're probably doing.
And so for some context on size, Nike revenue is what, 50 billion a year?
Yeah, it's a ton. Adidas is half of Nike. And I think New Balance
is like 5 billion. So New Balance is like 10% of Nike.
Yes.
From the basics I'm getting on this just from some Googling.
Yep, exactly.
And so to Brian's point, Brian's saying, hey, does this not cause a ton of confusion for consumers with Cooper being both a New Balance and Nike guy? I would say that he's a New Balance guy who has to wear Nike via contractual agreement on other places. But yeah, it does cause consumer. But I think for the consumer, it's what do they hear more versus what do they see more necessarily? It's because like I think the era of where we had to figure out what shoes someone was wearing by what they wore on the court is definitely been replaced with the what do we hear people talking about on social media that this person represents is like significantly more. So I would say this is but it's 100% confusing. And New Balance is basically being like, cool, we'd rather have it be confusing and be in the conversation than not be in the conversation at all.
Exactly. And I think it's a good move for him. He gets the best of both worlds. He's going to get a big bag from New Balance that he wouldn't get from Nike right now. And he still gets to wear the shoes that he seems to prefer on court.
How big do you think the bag is for our young NIL man?
Yes, it's probably around $1 million, maybe. Maybe. I don't know. I wanted to do some digging for a year. So we'll see. I'll do more. I'll report back.
All right. Let's get a couple minutes on our last one before we bring in our guest.
What's our last one, Warren? Remind me.
Or Ashwin, did you have there's a third one on that agenda? Do you remember which one it was?
Just talking U.S. Open. We are.
Oh yes, that's right. Naomi.
In the midst of U.S. Open. There was. So I was on the U.S. Open partners page today, and like off the cuff, like I remember, like Chase is there every year, like J.P. Morgan, like they're just those. You see them always in the back. It's like always the banks. But I think what is a really interesting one is Grey Goose, and they have their kind of signature drink, which is the Honey Deuce. And I was looking at some Honey Deuce stats, and they sell about $10 million a year at the U.S. Open of these Honey Deuce drinks, which I think is fascinating. Like there's a
whole U.S. Open economy around food.
Yeah, what's the Honey Deuce? Tell us what it is, because I saw this too. Joe Pompliano did a thing on it. So
the Honey Deuce, I mean, I gotta look at what exactly the Honey Deuce is. It's Grey Goose. It's Grey Goose and a lemonade raspberry liqueur and honeydew. Nice. And last year they sold 450,000, which is about $10 million. And they think they're going to sell more this year. Wow. And so a partnership like that seems so strong for Grey Goose. I mean, Grey Goose and then like Evian, you see those water bottles all over the US Open, kind of like fitting with their brand. So
also, I think where Grey Goose got it right is it's also fit, right? Like if you make an excellent drink, it's one of those where if it was just Grey Goose all around, that wouldn't make sense. But it's like the actual combination of the product in hand is massive. And then that was built over what? Like how long has that drink been there? Decades?
Yeah, I think so.
And then you get this built-in like shareable. I love how it like contrasts with it kind of works with the colors of the court and the background.
But I
And
feel
it
like social media
contrasts.
brought that forward, right? Again, this has been the
Yeah.
case for a minute. And basically,
Yes.
because it existed for so long and was inherently social media, like it's almost luck, right? Or just the fact that, hey, having put stuff in place and been consistent for so many years, social media brought this out. Like they're relishing in this moment that they basically didn't plan for and are now pushing the pedal on, which is great. But like this is a pure like, hey, we've been here for a while. We got lucky play.
Well, it's super cool. I mean, it's a great moment to make a splash.
Well, I do think to the point, like making, I think the thing too, we look at if you're a liquor company or you're a beverage company or someone doing this, like the difference here between there and what everyone else is doing is like they made an excellent drink. To someone's point in the comment, like the mint julep of the US Open or whatever it looks like, is like
Great
if
point.
you went through the pain of actually creating that, getting the bartenders involved, getting it out there, making it a cultural thing, making it that good, like that's a step above being like, we're the bar sponsor. We want to make sure we have the top shelf and our logos placed, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's super smart and it's a great, I mean, if you can, this seems like one of the best, sponsorships, if you can get your money back, and you're sponsoring and you have something that you can actually sell at one of these events, it's great. And it's not just a like visibility play. Nike, the only other one I just wanted to mention before we go is Naomi Osaka did this, great partnership with Nike and Ambush and did this really
the Ambush Coquette. This is so good. Yeah,
it's so good. And it comes off the heels of the Wimbledon wedding dress back at Wimbledon. This woman Wilson did a wedding dress, and it was, I think this is,
I've
we're
got to
going to
say,
see more of this.
Nike having Yoon in the building so much is the best thing that they have going for them, in my opinion.
Well, it's funny because it doesn't translate commercially a lot. I think Yoon is best used in moments like this.
But just having someone who like understands it, who like gets it immediately. And like obviously I don't know how much like Ambush's relevance is like very particular to people like me and then not very particular like outside of that, right? But like she has all the toolkit to think through any of these scenarios and come out the other side with the right product.
Totally. This is the best example of where they can do that. I'm going to show one thing before we move on because I want to try to add a little bit of value, and then we've got our Olipop guest coming. This is a one-pager that I often show that's like a personal brand one-pager. To me, Naomi Osaka, I always use her as a great example. She's introverted. She's not like super outspoken, but when she is, she chooses the places she does. So she does not need to reinforce her brand that she's a tennis player. And this is the mistake a lot of athletes make, is that they are constantly sort of reinforce the sport that they do, which is already reinforced by everybody else in the media, their coaches. And so she has founded a media company for life after tennis. She's been outspoken about mental health and had some demonstrations about that. And she's invested in that. And then fashion. And so this is a great example where her passion for fashion aligns with then Nike's business and goals objectives. And so it's a great way to think about how she wants her brand to stand out and then the partners that actually help amplify that. And so I think it's a good practice that anyone can have as they're thinking about how they want to define their own brand or what they want to stand for. All right.
Love to see it. All right. We got Steven on here. I'm out of the stage.
All right.
Steve, how we doing?
Sorry about that.
What's going on, brother? I think we wanted to kick off. We had a hard question to kick right off. Why is the growth of this alternative soda category so slow? Like, what is taking so long for there to be adoption here?
People just don't get it. I don't know.
So big plans to change that, or
it's so confusing. It's such a confusing value proposition.
So quick intro to Steve. So kind of director of growth and strategic partnerships at Olipop. Been there for 5 years, 6 years, Steve. Like basically since the kind of origin of Olipop.
Employee zero. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you've kind of been there, kind of like
you were there with the OG branding. It was a rough run then.
I actually was before me. That was like 6 months pre-launch, and I joined like a month pre-launch.
Steve came in and said, "We got to turn this around." So
I actually got their pitch deck when they had just flipped the branding, and I made it like 4 slides in, and I was like, "This will change the world if it tastes good, and if it's priced under $3." And both those things were true.
So you guys, this year there's rumors that you're on track to hit 500 million. Last year you did 200 million, maybe north of that, but these are the public numbers. And then recently you guys have been in the news. You got a partnership with the LA Clippers, and you guys have had this history of kind of like sports and stadium partnerships. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like what the strategy there has been and what it looks like?
Yeah, I have personally spearheaded all of our sports initiatives, and to be honest, we've kind of always had this core tenet of like not almost taking whatever the better for you playbook is and like doing the opposite, because a lot of these, as I have learned in the last decade, I was investing in consumer brands for 4 years, primarily better for you food and beverage. And so many brands would like dominate in Whole Foods and Sprouts, and then they'd get to Walmart and Target and die on the hill. And you see the same thing over and over, where people just weren't evolving their marketing to be mainstream. And I didn't sleep for like 6 months when we were launching it, before we launched at Walmart in 2022, because I was terrified that people wouldn't notice it or care in that channel. And after Walmart and Target started working, it was like, okay, this thing probably has mass appeal. And the next step for us was like, honestly, going after soda head on, right? And I always say like the 4 channels, or kind of the 4 places in the world that have been super dominated by Coke and Pepsi for the last 40 years are sports venues, movie theaters, airplanes, and really restaurant. The whole restaurant space is pretty much dominated by those guys as well. And so I just thought sports made the most sense for us. And that's like the logic. It's like show up in places that soda has showed up historically. I can get into the nitty gritty of like how it all came together, but I'll pause.
It's a great insight. Sorry. So you've done one with the Kansas City Current. Who else is in the sports portfolio right now?
Yeah. So Kansas City was basically my dip my toe in, learn how this works case study. Transparently, it was like the only deal we could do at the time, because they were building their own stadium and didn't have a soda partner. Nice. And so I basically signed a marketing deal with them Q1 last year. And it was really my way of saying, hey, we're doing this. We're interested in this space. I did a Morning Brew interview. I think it's right there, actually, Marketing Brew. And with the president of the team, we kind of told the story of how it came together. I had actually done a deal with a player on the team, and then she connected me to the owner of the team, and yada, yada, yada.
Oh, nice.
And
who was the player?
Lynn Williams, who actually just scored a big goal in the Olympics a few weeks ago.
Nice. Okay, so you went from athlete to then team.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, women's soccer feels like it makes sense for us. Our kind of core customer way over indexes as an NWSL fan. So that was kind of the data insight. And then I would guess it's probably like one of the smallest dollar sports deals ever signed, but do the interview, make some noise about it, inbox LinkedIn, it blows up like immediately. And I quickly realized there's like a lot of people looking for Olipops in this world. And I honestly probably took like, I would say 80 conversations over the course of the following 3 months last year. And 90% of them have Coke or Pepsi deals and like can't even really look at us or talk to us. But a handful did not. And the Clippers, as a good example, were building the Intuit Dome and didn't have Coke signed yet. And, that took like 6 months to put together, but we signed that kind of top of this year. And then it's interesting because I had that in my pocket throughout this entire year as more teams were reaching out. And even from like a year ago to now, I've noticed I have probably 8 NBA teams with live conversations going right now where they're all triangulating different ways to figure out how to let us sit next to their existing partner.
Yeah,
we actually have another big.
They want more revenue, right? Yeah, and you're happy
it's
to be
just
there.
the fact that like this is a kind of a crazy stat. Are you guys familiar with Numerator? They're kind of like the most useful data analytics company in our space because they're crunching credit card data. It's a little bit like I don't know how the hell they have all this information. It's a little scary, honestly, but in Numerator, we over-index Gen Z more than any other brand in grocery of some scale. It basically is as long as at least 10% of Gen Z purchases the product, we actually over-index the furthest versus Gen Pop. And I thought that stat was for our category. And then I dug into it with Numerator, and they're like, no, it's up for all grocery brands. And I was like, okay, that's nuts. So I go to, just as an example, like Intuit Dome will do 41 home basketball games this year and 120 concerts, right? And so like Olivia Rodrigo just did 2 shows there. That audience is drinking Olipop. They're not drinking Coke or Pepsi. It's just the reality. And
great point.
when you think about the like Live Nations of the world, and their audience is getting younger every day, and like they did a massive survey and they shared it with me. They're like, the young generation wants something that they can post on Instagram, something that's doing good for the world and something that's good for their bodies. And who ticks those boxes, right? It's not the big dogs.
I'm actually curious. We had a good question in the chat.
A lot of these arenas are now trying to like carve their beverage partnerships up so that they can have one brand in enhanced water, one brand in protein, one brand in energy, one brand in functional soda, and then one legacy soda partner. And it's the way I think it's the future. I don't know. I don't see a world where these big dogs are going to own every category anymore, because it just doesn't work for the way the consumers are operating now.
I think it makes the most sense too, because then also logistically, like I imagine a lot of the drinks prior were all fountain drinks. We had a question about that in the chat. And then now the more categories they have, the more natural it is for it to be in cans and in the other. Have you guys ever, I know competing inside that space where you looked at all those things you mentioned before, whether it was airlines, movie theaters, et cetera, is there ever a fountain route for you guys? I guess that would probably be like pretty logistically complicated, or is it always going to be canned?
You know what's interesting? Fountain is I wouldn't say dying, but it's receding because of all of these guys are under heavy pressure to reduce or completely remove plastic, and you really can't do fountain without plastic straws, plastic lids, and so it's two things.
What a sea change to be able to take advantage of, right? To be able to say,
and everybody's moving towards grab and go, Amazon Go technology, which like doesn't really work as well for fountain anyway. So the next arena we're going to go into is installing like 6 more grab and goes ahead of next season, and we're going to be in all of those. And then on the restaurant side of things, you have these big restaurant chains that COVID completely inverted their business models and went from 25% delivery to 75% delivery and takeout, and people just don't grab a fountain soda when they're doing delivery and takeout. So I'm in conversations with massive multi-thousand unit restaurant chains that are like, oh shit, I don't have a good beverage set. I've been relying fully on my in-house teas out of the fountain, but like people aren't buying those anymore. What's the next best?
It really is the perfect storm for that category. Think about all these external and macro level factors, right? Like this COVID change, the change to delivery, the idea that the fountain drink is dying because of the shift to plastic, like Gen Z and the overall kind of health movement. Really incredible kind of positioning, and then obviously the ability to take advantage of it that you guys have been able to do.
Gut health searches were already trend. Like I got involved with Olipop because I was seeing the gut health stuff starting to trend in the venture world 2015, 2016, 2017, but then COVID just like exacerbated it. I think we used to have a stat. I can't remember what it was. I think like gut health or gut talk, the hashtag like tripled during COVID. And I think 20% of videos on the gut talk hashtag on TikTok are actually Olipop videos, which is kind of a crazy stat too. But you have this like perfect storm of like people prioritizing their health, people like pulling back on like extraneous expenses and reinvesting that into better for you products that they're using every day. And so Olipop is like, 2.5x the cost of traditional soda on a per ounce basis, but it's a small, relatively easy from an absolute dollar value perspective change to make every day to have long-term effects on your health. And so all those factors were obviously combined. And then you also had like the other component that people don't really think about is kombucha had this like crazy run up, ton of venture dollars came in, Coke investing in brands, Kavita purchased by Pepsi. They all petered out. That category never cracked $1 billion in retail sales and has been declining. And so you had all these retailers invest all this shelf space and giving full coolers to kombucha. It's trading down. Olipop comes in at half the price point, 80% less sugar, and better tasting products, in my opinion. And so we were to gobble up all like the dead kombucha space. There was 20 kombucha brands at Whole Foods at one point. We get to we take out the bottom half of that category, put functional soda, and now you have places like massive retailers are going to have full-on modern functional soda sets next year, which is
just that price difference alone allows such a different retail footprint to be able to not only like undercut everything that was in there, but also be able to go to big box. I'm really interested in what you mentioned before about like Walmart and Target going in there. Because I think a lot of brands, especially people that we talk to or in our audience here, are kind of in those scenarios where they're like, all right, we've dominated in like natural grocery, or we dominated in whatever smaller channels we have, independent sporting goods, but now we're making this jump to big box. And a lot of them fail, like as you mentioned, because they can't drive that level of demand. What other things besides the sports partnerships were y'all thinking about, as you made that jump, like anything in merchandising or any other kind of marketing that was really important?
Yeah, I tell this story relatively frequently too. When we were really in Whole Foods and Sprouts, I was laser focused on your high converting, call it like the wellness fitness crowd on Instagram, where you're doing discount codes, swipe ups, very transactional, very buy now approach. And I just didn't think that the Walmart shopper was going to be our e-commerce shopper, right? They're going to be less inclined to fork over $40 for a 12-pack of soda. And so when we launched at Walmart, I flipped our whole model to be much more focused on CPM and reach and just driving awareness of the brand with much more mass scale creators on TikTok. And so we kind of like shifted from like the wellness girlies on Instagram over to, I call them the unhealthy foodies. If you look up the hashtag Olipop partner on TikTok, you'll see kind of who we work with on there. And it's like very much cooking, mukbangs, fast food reviews. It's not the wellness crowd. It's mass scale and reach. And Walmart is now our number one customer. And it shocks me every day to see how big we are in there. And I actually was just literally on a Walmart call before we got on here. And it's
I had this brand moment. I think it was not this Thanksgiving. Maybe it was a Thanksgiving prior or whatever, but it was like a bunch of families I know, a bunch of people together. And it was like all of us in like my age range and down, like introducing Olipop to their like parents and them getting relatively excited about it. And then like going, and then the transition to that, like that generation, then going into like basically from a very natural organic review to be like going into retail. Like there was just it was funny like watching. I think I was tweeting about it at the time, being like, oh, this is a thing that's happening in real time. And it's interesting because that was when I think Poppy, not to grab a hold in the competition here, was like dominating the TV conversation, but like the in-person conversation was dominated by Olipop. I found it really interesting.
I mean, Poppy spent $43 million on above line media January to April this year, which is like candidly more than our entire marketing budget for the year. So
when I look at that too, it's funny. We've talked about this. I don't know if it's on this show or one of these YouTube videos, but this is an Olipop household, right? I just prefer the taste. We buy it all the time, and I just one of those where like, cool. If you are incumbent in the category, they're coming after you. You guys put a flag in there. If you're coming after that, you guys have two choices. If you can't make a better product, you either need to outspend by such a radical amount or fail, right? And so I do think like that's kind of the only alternative you have if you are like, all right, cool, it's the Coke Pepsi scenario, except Pepsi has a bigger war chest.
Yeah, it's interesting too that we have 9 grams of fiber in Olipop. We have like some pretty complicated botanicals that are hard to source, and so our ingredient cost is relatively high for the category. And this is just like comparing the labels on each. This is all publicly available information. And, just inherently you can make an assumption around gross margin of the two products. It is going to be higher because of the specific ingredients they use. And so that gives them more wiggle room to spend. And I think they execute really well. They've done a really good job. They're a very good competitor for us, and it definitely motivates us.
Yeah, well, having a good competitor in the market that spends opens the market wider for everybody, right? I think it's a good natural scenario, like in all cases. How are y'all thinking about shifting the strategy going into this, next year, this next phase? Any changes in the market? Any changes in things you see happening in kind of marketing or retail?
The sports thing is like definitely working, and it's just like it's been a fascinating thing to kind of be on the inside of and watch different teams evolve and which leagues are like thinking ahead and which ones are kind of still kind of living in the past. So that's going to be interesting. I have a handful of other kind of arenas we're looking at. Very interesting movie integration I'm looking at right now. It's something I've wanted to do for a long time, where it's like written into a script of something and not just product placement. That to me is just like, if you watch any movie from the 90s, I would say 90% of the cases it's a Coke. So every now and then you see a Pepsi, but they're in every movie if you're paying attention. Like it's nuts.
Wait, so Steven, you could have gotten on the Zendaya, the tennis movie,
I was going to say, Challengers. She just
Challengers.
You know what I'm saying?
Cheers! Right after a good match with Roger Federer.
Now they're looking for Euphoria season 2.
What's your sports marketing background, Jordan?
I spent about 15 years at Nike, 10 years in brand marketing. So I just left a couple of years ago. So this is, all my world, or we would intersect over that.
It's interesting. I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, we have the teams. I know we need to be arenas make the most sense for us by a lot, just from eyeballs, and NBA is a good fit for us. And you get the concerts and stuff. And, NFL stadiums, MLB are so heavy fountain. It just doesn't really work for us. And there's not enough unique eyeballs in those too. Cause once you factor in season ticket holders, you're hitting like an MLB stadium will hit like, I don't know, a couple 100,000 uniques a year. An arena hits like 2 million uniques a year. And that's like pretty interesting too.
But then
executing them is really hard. And like, you need money to create the assets. You need to do like concourse activations a couple times a year. You need to create like the quiz or whatever that they put up on the screen. I can't talk about the next one we have because it isn't announced yet, and I would get murdered by my PR team. But we'll announce it in like the next 3 weeks, and it's awesome because it's hitting NBA, WNBA, and concert venue for us, which is just like the holy grail.
That's a great idea. I love your the women's soccer. I mean,
you need a real strategy and budget to make them worthwhile, because now with our launch of Shelf Stable, we'll be able to use marks in market too, and we can build off shelves and displays and use official, functional soda of the Clippers here in LA. But like that's a whole nother work stream that I've never done before. We just hired a VP of shopper marketing who's going to help out with that. But my life here is just figuring out stuff I've never done before every day.
Well, it sounds really fun. I just want to, before I'm going to turn it over to Ashwin here in just a second, I wanted to just show real quick, like for people who nerd out on like sponsorships here. So like US Soccer will sell a bunch of different sponsorships, right? We were talking about this earlier. So they have Michelob Ultra as their official beer partner. And this is usually starting to just parse words on what types of drinks. So Coca-Cola is their official soft drink. And then they have an official hard seltzer. And it's basically just trying to, so y'all, what do you categorized as? I'm guessing you're trying to get out of like soft drink category, because
it's interesting because I've been telling people for so long that we're a soda, and now I'm like, well,
it's not a soda. Yeah, what do you mean? We're not.
We're a functional beverage. We are, I want to say soda where we can, but there's venues where we can't even use that word. So it's like functional beverage. One at in FC Cincinnati, we're the official prebiotic drink, which we don't like. That sounds too medicinal and healthy. Sure. So. And in certain cases, you just like proud partner is fine, and the logo, you want to get the logo in there and have the product in the menu. It's interesting because we were classified and we called the product a sparkling tonic when we launched, and it was super confusing. No one knew what that meant. It didn't give soda cues. It sounded like alcohol, bitter, maybe. Probably effervescent, and so it worked against us. And now I'm like, well,
I like that. Yeah, official sparkling something. Ashwin, what's on your mind from an Olipop standpoint? I know you've got some thoughts.
Yes. So we talked sports. I know you guys did a partnership with Camila Cabello. You've had a few other celebrity partnerships. Can you talk us through just like how those came about, how you think about them, the impact they've had?
Yeah. Camila came from Sharif.
Yeah.
And it's like anything else. My role here is really been like the figure it out person. Like every year I kind of have my own thoughts on places that we need to show up and places that we need to exist, and kind of bouncing back and forth with the founders. And that's how we landed on like sports and music. And when we did our Series B end of 2021, honestly, Poppy had just announced a big round with a bunch of celebrities, and we were like, all right, we should probably like start taking some of these meetings, because we were getting inbound from people. And we brought in a handful. They were publicly available. The Jonas Brothers, Gwyneth Paltrow, Mindy, Camilla, a handful of NFL players. And the logic was to bring people in who were like really fans of the product and the brand, and then hopefully, actually work with one or two of them after the fact. And I don't know. I have lots of thoughts on this, and I think it really depends on like where you're at as a brand. And I think pulling the lever at the right time, like we specifically pulled Camilla in as we were launching in Walmart, and like we actually shut down a Walmart in Burbank and shot a TikTok with her, and we had them on our end card on our TV spot. And it's as like anything else in marketing, it's it's all kind of tricky to measure in the grand scheme of things. But she's like always referenced in PR now, and we've got these stills that we use all the time. And I think it was a big credibility thing. It just sort of like put us on the map with the masses. That like, and to be honest, what the craziest part was that I didn't expect was like her Stan accounts on Twitter, and I run our Twitter like secretly on the side, and like blew us up on there. And it like honestly became the most interesting channel of all of the channels that we activated her on, was like Twitter. And I had no idea. And our Twitter feed is still like inundated with Camilla stans all the time. And I made them a little discount code, and they put it out in the Camilla Telegram groups and all that stuff. But downside is like she's a superstar, and she is, there's a lot of things that come with a superstar, and people, and expenses. And as I've looked and learned, and we've kind of proceeded on, this year has been much more about up and coming talent and the Cameron Brinks of the world and Tanner Adele, who was featured on the Beyonce album. And I'm moving towards doing shorter campaigns where we can like really get to know people and see how their team is to work with, see how they are at shooting social content, like all these little things that make the partnerships really work. Like we're trying to, I would say, date before we get married now, instead of just like diving head on into a 12-month deal that's got a zillion deliverables, and a zillion deliverables adds a lot of cost, right? You got to like get stuff shot and edited and approved and legal. And so I'm trying to get like, I kind of view the world as like, there's like the Coke and Pepsi people, and then there's like the Olipop people that are not on the Coke and Pepsi radars yet. And so that's sort of what we're thinking about right now. That makes sense.
Super interesting. And then the last thing that's on my mind is we saw Ridge Rush. I know there's some college marketing and activations you're doing around like that flavor, or just Olipop on campus. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, that one is, it's our take on a Mountain Dew, if you will. And it's like tricky to name it, obviously, because like
you can't just do Mountain Pop. You can't do Ollie Dew. You got to
do that. Yeah. And to be honest, we were like at an offsite a few months ago. We were trying to figure out like what the hook was, and kind of the like sugar-free Red Bull is actually the consumer we're like trying to align it to. It's like the Mountain Dew consumer is like exactly what you think, and they're not looking for better for you products. And so
you guys are sponsoring the Marine Corps. We're not doing that. Yeah.
No. And then the Rush thing, we were just like, wait, we get zillions of emails from sororities every week asking for product for their, Rush or whatever, their bid day. And was like, why don't we just like leverage that word? And, it's one of those, like, to be honest, all in, that campaign cost us, low 5 figures. And it was really a PR stunt. It was like a landing page. And we had people, college organizations. It wasn't just sororities and fraternities, any college org, apply for us to like sponsor their recruitment. And we went through and picked like, I don't know what it was, like 15 a day, and just shipped, a bunch of cases to them. And like, we had like hammocking clubs applying, and like kayaking clubs and Harry Potter clubs, and we got like, I don't know, I think it landed in like the 5,000 to 10,000 range of applications. And now we've kind of got this like, I was like, why don't we just keep gifting these people, like just pick random ones every week to just send product to? And it's one of those like silly insights that honestly is just like, especially when you have a beverage product, people are not going to just like throw it away like they might with like a skincare product that they don't use, but like send people a bunch of product. They're either going to drink it or they're going to give it away. And it's like, we know our conversion rate from trial to retention is like, we're like 3.5x the beverage industry standard in terms of repeat purchase at retail. So, I was like, let's just gift a bunch of this product out. And it's like, it's actually like all rolling out right now. And we also timed it up perfectly. In between launching it and shipping the product, we launched it at Walmart. So we put an insert into all those shipments that said now available at Walmart, which is perfect for college campuses. And then we got the Shannon Sharp thing. I don't know if you've seen any of that stuff. We're doing a big activation with his podcast. He's posted a bunch of stuff. He posted a teaser video on Wednesday. That one's been really fun. We're posting the polished content next week. It's actually leaning into a meme that he had done a few years ago. And I don't know if any brand has ever done this. We're like, it's a podcast sponsorship, but we also produce a piece of content that like leans into something that his audience knows really well. And I
like this one just because it's unexpected. Like you look at kind of the other ones, you're like on brand. And this, you're like, oh, this is intriguing. It's fun.
Yeah. This is like the stuff that like our Walmart buyer eats this up. You know what I mean? Like that, this is mass scale. It adds to my sports narrative without doing it super overtly. And like, he's got crazy reach. He has the biggest video podcast on YouTube. Like
he's sneakily like massive. That's one of those things where like, okay, if we ask 10 people close to us, like, are they familiar with Shannon Sharp? You'd get like one to be like, yes, but then his reach is like absolutely enormous.
And it's not us, right? Yeah. It's not, white dudes in cities. It's much more mass than me. And that's like, it's funny as I like think about us and Poppy, like, they're very consistent and they're very much going after like a vibe and this aesthetic, you know what I mean? And it's like, it's well done. And like, we've kind of gone almost the opposite direction where I'm like trying to be very mass and mainstream and like your everyday, like your buddy, and we're not trying to make this like super aspirational aesthetic thing. We're just trying to be a soda, right? It's like, we're not trying to like, we're not trying to slap hands for people who do drink soda. It's like, have your soda just like every now and then, take one that's 3 grams of sugar instead of 40. And all of these things, our NASCAR partnership, we have an esports team. Like they're all really meant to just get our message out to an audience that we believe is a good fit for the brand through a very authentic microphone. So that's my approach to things. I'm very anti like overt advertising. I'm much more about subversion and just showing up in the right place at the right time. And you know, when people say
you have a product with that kind of rebuy value, you could really lean into that. It's amazing.
It's clear. Yeah, I mean, well, Steven, I actually wanted to just real quick. We got a lot of people who follow us who are like aspiring or established marketers, interested in this industry. Any career advice before we close out here to people who are wanting to do some cool kind of scrappy stuff like that?
Oh man. I don't know.
I just requesting Olipop at your sorority, building a viral video from that, saying take that.
I feel like there's like I feel like consumer psychology is the thing that I actually care about the most. And I think a lot of like the like marketing tropes are kind of bullshit. And a lot of stuff that worked 15, 20 years ago is like completely irrelevant today with just attention spans being where they are and where eyeballs are. People are spending 2 hours a day on TikTok. They're not doing the things, they're not consuming the content that used to be the way of the world. And people don't think in funnels and campaigns. They like see what's cool on their screen and then they like see it in a store. And like I still believe word of mouth is like by far the most effective thing of any channel, right? So it's like, how do you scale that? And I just like I'm a student of culture, honestly. I read and listen to the weirdest shit, and like I try to be very down the middle on stuff. And I'm always asking people like one of our sales guys put me onto this. It's called Sidious Mag. I don't know if you know it, Ashwin. They're like the biggest name in track and field media.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
We've been a presenting sponsor with them for 2 years, and they've like fucking crushed for us. Like
Sick.
absolutely
what
crushed.
Is that?
And it's
Sidious
like
Mag?
Sidious Mag, yeah.
Yeah.
They coined the runner's soda, and that's like been hashtagged like literally thousands of times now by their audience. And it's like a perfect brand fit. It makes so much sense. And that came from a guy on our sales team. And I'm always asking people like, what influences you? What are you reading and listening to? And that's how I find stuff all the time, honestly.
Well, that's awesome. We've got people asking where can they find you? Any handles or anything in the world?
I post regularly on LinkedIn when we have like cool updates to share.
Okay. What's your last name, Steven?
Vigilante.
All right, Steven Vigilante. What an epic last name.
The Vigilante marketing.
Crazy name.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate the time. The Brand Brothers, for people who don't know, are going to be in Boston here in just 3 weeks, I think, September 18th through 20th.
Doing a live show.
Doing a live show.
We're going to do a live show.
Is this a live stream? Is this live? Like, are people watching this
right now?
Yeah.
Right,
not on Instagram right now, but yeah, totally. I know. LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, but we'll be in person, maybe in Boston somewhere actually running. You've mentioned running. So y'all stay tuned. We'll be around and broadcasting from there. Steven Vigilante, thank you so much. And everybody, wish Ashwin a happy birthday. It's Ashwin's birthday.
My birthday.
On the F Around Friday.
It's our founder's birthday today. You guys sure?
Wow, there we go. I'm drinking Olipop in your honor.
Let's go.
Indeed.
You run some miles this morning? How many miles did we run?
We ran not the usual, shorter run this morning.
No half marathon.
All right, I got at 10 o'clock. I got to jump on.
Okay, y'all. Likewise. Have a great one.
See ya.
All right, bye.